Remember how to do it. Okay, that's there. That looks mostly okay. Sandy data, everything's, yeah, I think everything's fine, honestly. I don't need to stress about where stuff is and how stuff's doing. Oh, the headphones are down there. I should probably wear those. I think that'll be useful. Here we go. Here's the cross stitch, and we have already finished one color. I'm just gonna pull that out. There we go. Get that done. I have actually been working on a little system, to here it is. I was just seeing if I could switch it over, but it's actually a pain in the neck. Now these might fall off because I've got to get longer nails, but I don't know if you can see. It's a clothes peg hanging system. I get really annoyed with organizing my floss and sorting all that stuff out. So yeah, I have been working through getting a new system. The nails I ordered were a little bit short, so I need to order new nails, which is going to be a pain because it took a bit of time to push all 100 nails in. Also found out 100 nails is not enough nails. Oh dear. So I've ordered 200 slightly longer nails, and I'm going to have to pull out those 100 nails and put in the slightly longer nails. But it should mean that my system is better organized in the end. And that's all that matters. Because I get really annoyed when I'm looking for a floss and I can't find the right color, or I know it's somewhere there and I've got this big bag of floss, which I know you've seen before. And it's just a pain in the neck to sort through. So I am sorting that out. I'm quite chuffed with that. When I'm all done with it, I'll make a video and I'll sort of show my system. Because I'm also I bought 2 pegboards ages ago. One pegboard is all set up with the various DIY tools stuff, which I'm really glad about and that's been set up for a while because, you know, we bought this flat and taking a bunch of time to set it up. And it's nice to have the tools sort of in place and everything arranged on a pegboard. That's very pleasing to me. But the other pegboard was always arranged for the crafting stuff. Unfortunately, the crafting stuff is kind of a hack because most people don't use pegboards to store crafting stuff, even though it's like totally makes sense. Some people do. I got the idea from Pinterest. So not an original idea. Neither are the nails on the board. But I like it, especially the clothes peg solution. Once the nails are longer, it'll work better. But because I hate those little plasticky things I use at the moment. I mean, they work, but they're just not great for storage. I think, I mean, I've seen some other solutions that I've considered, and yeah, I don't like pre-cut floss because some people pre-cut their floss to specific lengths, and that's just a bit too factory line for me. I like to have a little bit more what am I thinking about? I like to have a little bit more randomization to the system, a bit more human element. That's kind of the point, you know. Because it's not finding its... Oh, there we go. There's been progress off stream because I've been cross-stitching on the sofa while watching stuff. It's 2 holes too far. So all of the colour that I was doing last time is done. Hey! Good to see you, good to see you. It's always nice when people drop by. But yeah, So slowly but surely work on this. Get this in order. As I say, I will probably make a video of the new pegboard system and the new floss arrangement systems with nails and clothes pegs. Because the thing I like about the closed peg system is the closed peg pins the floss. Al is in Gems Al. Ah. Yeah. It's good to see you. I don't think we've spoken in a very long time. Too long, to be honest. Oh, mother. That's annoying. That's extremely annoying. Yeah, I need to get up north. We went up to Scotland last year as a short little break, and on the way I dropped into Darlington to see my mum, and that was nice. But I need to actually go up north and visit a bunch of people. There are a whole bunch of people I have not seen in quite some time. Thankfully, a lot of them made the wedding, so that was useful. But you don't really catch up with people at your own wedding. At other people's weddings, you catch up with them. But at your own wedding, there's too many people to speak to, and it's all a bit of a thing. I think we balanced our wedding pretty well for catching up with people. We had little bits like a silent disco, which really helps. Oh, much appreciate. Well, as I say, it has been too long since I've come up north. I was planning to visit, I won't name names, but there's a few Newcastle people I wanted to go visit. And I just haven't had the time, and then 2020 happened. And now I have the time, but not so much the anything else. Though it is opening up stuff. And as I say, we did manage one little trip to Scotland, so it's getting better. It's getting better. Slowly but surely. Though I don't think I'm going to be doing anything big for my birthday. Because my birthday's coming up in, well, not very long. Not very long at all. Last year I did a VR chat party for my birthday. Yeah, no, I can imagine. Well, the funniest thing, well, not the funniest thing, is if you're in the LARP community, because I know you guys were, I don't know if you still are, but one of the main LARPs in the UK is going through what they call the long winter, because it's just been, they normally take a break for winter anyway, because, you know, LARPing in the middle of winter in the UK is not the greatest if it's an outdoor LARP. But obviously, because of everything that's happened, they've effectively had a very long winter. So yeah, there's been some real downtime on the LARPing side. I think I've said this story. I don't know, I have said this story on stream before, but for those of you who might not have heard it before, I regularly GM. I like doing tabletop stuff and whatnot, but obviously these days everything's online, and I tried to do an online game at the start of quite a few events went ahead, yes, but the big one didn't. The big one did not go ahead. I know a few of the smaller events went ahead, but I forget its name. I don't take part. One of my old flatmates takes part. She always goes to it. But anyway, so tabletop. I always like to do tabletop in person. I've had the occasional remote player, but they've only been temporarily remote, never permanently remote. You know, someone who's traveling or can't quite make it or something like that. And it's usually part of an ongoing game. And as a GM, I run a range of games. I've run games for like a table of little kids and I've run the same module for like a table of little kids to a bunch of very drunk adults or very sinister senior role players. So tone management's really important, you know, as you take stories and you go through themes, and it's nice to play around with, you know, different contents and emotional stuff and whatnot. Anyway, start of lockdown, we're like, okay, let's try a digital game. And it's going okay. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of the digital role-playing stuff. I prefer it in person. And we hit this moment, and one of our players has had injury recently. I don't know them very well, but they were referred by another player, which is super common. I've done a lot of convention GMing and stuff, so I don't find it strange to run for new people. I get pretty quick. And as I say, I've been doing tabletop since the early 90s, dating myself there. And I have done a lot of different content, and I've never had a player break on me. I've had players come close. I've had, we need to take a pause moments, all kinds of things like that. But I've never gone too far. And it was totally innocuous thing, actually. But because she had recently suffered a very serious injury, and not super recent, but, you know, recent enough, there was a moment, it was a modern magical thing, you know, present day kind of paranormal investigation thing. There was a moment where her character got injured, and a paramedic was there, and wasn't severely injured, but, you know, realistic setting. And the moment I mentioned that the medic put on a morphine patch, and I don't know if you've ever seen a morphine patch, but it has a very distinct look and smell. And I just mentioned it in passing because, you know, textual storytelling and all that. And that one detail was just enough to trigger. And, you know, sometimes you say something that's a bit sensitive, but you usually pick it up and you're usually able to think. But because doing a game through video chat, you just don't have the same bandwidth as being in the same room as the person. You can't pick up on all the cues. This just broke them. Derailed the game. We had to do a safety check on her, which doing a safety check on someone during COVID, it's a whole, because this was also like March of 2020, so it was a pain in the neck, in the sense of pain in the neck to check on her, not a pain in the neck because, like, obviously you do a safety check on someone, like, duh, but, you know, it just becomes a bit more complicated. And from that moment I swore I would never do a digital game again. I don't have it in me. Now, I could totally do a digital game that had no, shall we say, emotive content, but it's not the kind of game I want to run. Rather play a video game if that's the case. Rather just, play a video game if we're not going to lean into the emotional aspects and the social aspects of role-playing. But yeah, so I've stayed clear of, I haven't rolled a die in, quite some time now, coming up on 2 years. And I miss it. I really, really miss it. Because I used to have at least one regular game. And unfortunately, some of the big cons that I used to go to no longer run either, which is a shame. I know some new ones have popped up, and I need to find out which ones survive the long winter, so to speak, so I can get back into it, because, as I say, for me, it's been around a table, and it's seeing people's reactions, and having that personal space, you know, and doing that stuff. I'd consider doing, I can't do it virtually, I just can't. I'd consider doing it in VR if people had eye tracking and a few other bits and bobs, because I've been in social VR with people with eye tracking, and I think that's different. Because people think it's all about the face. A lot of it's just hand gestures and body movement, and a lot of the emoting is physical. And the other thing I really like about putting people in VR as opposed to video calls is if people are in VR, you're still in a shared space, and no one's watching YouTube on the side, or petting their cat is not so bad. Petting their cat is something people do at like regular table, but virtually I've found a lot of people, and it's no comment on the game, it's just the social context isn't there, the grounding of, oh, this is a thing we are all sharing in a social space. Like, people do things in virtual games they would never do in a tabletop. And it's just not my vibe. Whereas people don't do those things in VR, because in VR, like, yeah, you can pull up virtual screens and stuff while you're in headset, and you can use overlays and stuff. But even when people do that, they're still very much in the moment with you, and because you can see their body language, you can see when they're looking off into the distance and when they're thumbing something in the middle of the air, and then as a GM, like, if you've got physical players in a room and someone starts looking at their phone or something, you're like, aha, I need to pay attention to that person, or I need to wrap up this one-to-one, or I need to I need to check the pace of the game. Whereas, virtually, like video call, D&D, you just don't get that. So, yeah. Though I do like the benefit of not having to travel and everyone being in a very nice space, and I do see a lot of benefits to the remote stuff. Well, I don't see it as a disrespect to the GM, because I think a lot of the time it's because it's so easy. It's so easy to be distracted like that. It's like if you go to a game and every week people are putting sweets in front of you. It's really easy just to eat and snack a lot of unhealthy food, whereas a lot of people might not want sweets on the table, and you can then just say, like, as a group, hey, do we want to have healthy snacks, or do we want to have chips and dip and fun stuff and whatnot? And impulse control's hard. Impulse control is very hard. So, make it easy for people, set the mood, set the tone. It's like when people do, when people have the tone set, it helps for them, it really, really helps. I think it's one of the reasons why, it's like the difference between when you go to a LARP that's well costumed versus a LARP that's not well costumed. It just sets the tone. People don't feel as silly, like fully leaning into their characters and playing into the moment, It's like you will get better performance from actors at a dress rehearsal than than just a table read, for example. Give them something to bite their teeth into, to lean into, Same reason you use table music, or, I personally don't use minis, but I know a lot of people use minis for that reason. I personally find minis a bit constraining. Because, it's frustrating if you're using minis and then it's like, they're not quite conveying the thing, or there's a new thing you've got to add into the scene and you don't quite have the right mini. And you can use like, a shot glass or something. Yeah. Though I do enjoy one form of dungeon crawling that used to be popular back in the 3rd edition days at some cons. Basically, you would have a dungeon module, and it would be a very combat oriented tactical fighting kind of thing. But all the monsters were represented by, and the module itself, like in the module guidelines, had alcohol instructions, like you need bottles of this. And every monster was basically represented by a different mixture or a straight shot or whatever. and whoever dealt the killing blow to the beast had to take the shot, basically. It was like some magical dungeon or whatever pretense, but basically it was, dungeon crawling, the drinking game. And so you get into a situation where some people are rushing to get that like kill shot, and then other people are like, ooh, I really don't want to deal the kill shot here. You get a situation where you got a very drunk barbarian going, I'm going to rage mode, and obviously people's decision making kind of deteriorates. So yeah, fun things you can do at con that you can't do anymore. I mean, you could do it digitally, I just don't think it really has the same punch. Oh, one sec, I just need to go see to something. I'll be right back. Oh, apologies. My wife went to see a choir tonight, and she's just back from going to see, I forget the country, some country choir. She says it was very good. It is nice that now that things... We did actually manage to get to see a bunch of events and stuff last year, so it wasn't all bad. Just do a finishing. Oh, there we go. Bit naughty there, but hey. Come on, there we go. Scissor, skizzer. Come on. Yeah. There we go. No. My brain is just not coordinating. I've had one of those weeks where I'm back at work, but I'm not properly back at work, My brain did not come with me. Fudge skull. I'll just do that. It'll be fine. I'll pin it with the following stitches. I'm back at work, but I'm not really back at work. And so, thankfully, I've got very understanding co-workers, and we're like, we've all got brain melt. But, we're looking at Trello boards and things like that, and we're just trying to figure out where were we before the new year. Yeah, it's funny. It's also a bit difficult because most of my team is in the US. So I wake up in the morning and there's like me, one other person in the UK, and one person in France, and then the rest of the team are all on a US time zone. And so the three of us, I wouldn't say I'm not talkative. I can be talkative. I can also just sort of isolate myself as well. I have my modes, really. It's like I need this much intense socialization and then leave me alone for the rest of the time, please. That's very much how I am. You know, I have this very like on-off social mode. And but I'd say both of them are solid classic engineering style introverts, which I do not fall into the category of. And yeah, so let us say my mornings are extremely quiet, which works out for me, to be honest. And then around about 4 o'clock my meetings start, and then, you know, the rest of the day is meetings and doing any talking or code review I need to do with other people, because, you know, time zones. Because I can get my UK colleague to do code review, but he works in a slightly different area than me, so not great. Well, we have been getting back into, like, as I say, real life socializing. It is happening for us again, which is helpful. I think, as I said to, actually it wasn't my line. I think one of my friends said it first. In fact, I think I remember which friend said it. I like living in London again. They originally said at the start of the pandemic, they were like, I miss living in London. And I was like, what? Did you move out as well? Because a bunch of our friends moved out of London. Fucking pussies. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm just sad that some of our friends have left London. A lot of it, frankly, because they wanted to buy property. We managed to buy in London, so yay us. Have I gotten it all wrong? I don't think so. I think I'm okay. There we go. But yeah, so I was worried. Ironically, they did end up moving to Glasgow halfway through 2020, which was a whole thing. This particular friend. But yeah, their big beef was they just miss living in London, because even if, you know, you're still paying London rent and you're living in London, but you're not actually living in London anymore, because you can't go to all the events and do all the stuff and the reasons you live in London. Thankfully, summer last year was very different, and we did actually get to do it all, and to be honest, even in 2020 we did all our skating, and we went to the park, and we still socialized. We just socialized in the parks, so that works. But yeah, slowly get back to it. My improv class starts again next week, which will be fun. But normally I'm quite good at New Year's resolutions, and this year, New Year's resolutions have been, well, let us just say New Year's resolutions this year has been bothersome. So, pretty much from the age of 16, I have made, say, about 3 resolutions on average. I've written them down, I've not told anyone, and at the end of the year I have usually done 2 of 3, sometimes 3 of 3, usually 2.5 of 3, as in, like, I've almost always made progress on all of them, and I've usually accomplished 2 of them. Sometimes I've managed to accomplish all 3, but if I accomplish all 3, then I feel to myself like, oh, you didn't actually set very ambitious goals, which, hey, you know, whatever. You know, I like failing. Failing's okay, but I like to mostly succeed, if you know what I mean. So anyway, 2020's plans thrown out the window. Understandable, everyone gets that, right? Didn't make any resolutions for 2021. Just, I couldn't. I was like, nope, your resolution is survive. And then we went through to New Year's this year, and I'm sitting down, and I'm like, well, I need to make New Year's resolutions, because I do this every year. This is the plan. And I was drawing blanks. I was like, well, you know, we've got the flat and got a nice job and really comfy on this, and this is moving forward. And yeah, I was just like, okay, so what do I actually want to do? And obviously there's always things that you can sort of put on the board, so to speak. But I really wanted to make sure that whatever it is I do this year actually mattered. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make a list. I'm going to go through my diary, and I'm going to go through all my stats on my different platforms and figure out my calendars and maps and all that, and just figure out what did I actually do with my last 2 years. And obviously 2020 starts off strong with me giving a talk at Space Apes Games, releasing Dreams, a bunch of other cool stuff like on the go, but then obvious reasons things just kind of stall. Why are you being so pernickety? Sorry, we're just trying to get through this pernickety bit. So yeah, for obvious reasons, things kind of stall, and I was like, okay, and I went through the list, and I was like, you know what? I really didn't get as much done as I thought. I mean, I knew it was bad, but I was like, oh, I normally get a lot more done. And I was like, well, what do I regret not doing? And I'll say one of the things, I don't normally talk about my goals out loud because I'm a big believer in writing down your goals and working towards them, but I don't like to share goals. And I've talked about that before, and I'll talk about it another time again. But I very much follow the sort of zip it philosophy. Get it done. And this cross stitch, there we go. It's very dense at this bit. I'm just filling in little bits of confetti at this point. One of the things I did know is because I basically didn't stream last year at all, and I normally stream quite a bit. And so I was like, okay, we'll get back to that in a smaller capacity than I have in the past, which is why we're back. Gotta go. Take care. While we're back doing this. And yeah, so that was a big thing. Move that forward. But then the other thing I realized was I was really struggling to nail onto a specific yearly goal, because I'm in a funny place. I'm in a funny place of not wanting much, if that makes sense. There's things I want, but there's not really, not burning in desire for anything. Like, my creature comforts are very much sorted. And it's like, oh, well, how do I make a resolution like this? And so in the end, I was like, okay, well, I can't come up with an actual yearly resolution. So what I'm going to make my resolution is I'm going to have, when I looked through everything, I was like, okay, here's the lists of everything you've done. Okay, here are a bunch of micro goals, and we are going to refresh these micro goals a bit more frequently than I normally would. And that's kind of how I'm navigating my New Year's resolutions at the moment. And I think it'll work. But I have to admit, a big part of me, because I've always had these very big driving, overarching ambition things. And a big part of me is like, well, I don't have any of those at the moment, because the last big one was buy a house. We did that. We did that. So yeah, that was the last big one. So yeah, that's how I am with New Year's resolutions at the moment. I'm trying to figure all that out. Hey Alchemist, good to see you. Good to see you. I did see the news. I was up late cross-stitching, ironically. And yeah, keeping an eye on CES, because, CES. And yeah, the news comes along. PSVR 2 gets announced. Some more details get officially confirmed, which was great, because I accidentally said something very excitedly to some friends after what I thought was another announcement earlier. And then I was like, oh, they finally said that? And it's like, oh shit, that was a leak. Thankfully, everything that was leaked is now actually confirmed, thankfully. Decade in the making. Yeah, about 7 years. 7 years in the making. Not a decade. 7 years. 8 years? No, 7 years. 7 years in the making. Yeah. Well, so this is what people don't get, is like by the time you're 6 months out from shipping a console, people are already thinking about what the next console should be. Just how it is. And I laugh when people are like, oh, they did this because of this. I'm like, do you know how long it takes to set up a manufacturing line, to source components, to, do all the bits and bobs? Never mind if you're actually doing real R&D and not just, reusing other people's components, which I think the problem people have is they think about cell phones and stuff. Well, the one thing I will say, so whenever you work on projects like this, there's always different levels of confidentiality about stuff, right? There's different levels of secrecy. And I will say that the price and release date are the most secret of secret levels of information on a product. Now, there's some people who you just have to let know things like your manufacturer, you kind of have, and your stores, you kind of have to tell them when you're going to be stocking, but you don't have to give them too much lead time. You can give them surprisingly little. Regulators, you usually have to tell regulators sooner than you want to, and regulators generally have gotten pretty good at not leaking stuff, but it happens. The Chinese manufacturing leaks are usually pretty solid. There's a whole industry that basically sells corporate espionage data effectively, most of it to other companies, but some of it to journalists. And that's fairly easy. It's one of the reasons why Silicon Valley companies like to be software companies, not hardware companies. Because if you make a thing, someone can go park outside your factory and count the trucks, or they can count the shipping containers or whatever. There's a tangible value to your company because you sell widgets and you can see how many widgets get sold. But if you're a software company, your stock price could be anything, because your stock price is not linked to physical hardware. Your stock price is linked to drunk pixie dust and imaginings of the value of bits. So that's why people like to have software companies rather than hardware companies. And it's all a bit bullshit, because there's a lot of companies that should be hardware companies, not software companies, but because of the stock market, they're software companies. Yeah, it's a whole weird thing. In regards to those estimates, I'm guessing they mean financial year Q2, not calendar year Q2, or do they mean calendar year Q2? Because my guess is they would mean financial year. Though it would be nice if it was calendar year Q2. Calendar year Q2 is a bit too close to GDC, though. A bit close to... Well, they could do it in calendar Q2. Financial Q2 would be more my guess. I have no knowledge on this, by the way. I could safely say that I have been out long enough that I have zilch knowledge on the shipping date. Yes, zilch knowledge. I can speculate pretty accurately, but yeah. I think the people who are really going to nail it are going to be these Chinese shipping people. Because, it's not only things like counting them out of the factories, but, people have got to sort out shipping contracts and all kinds of things. I was surprised that so many people were surprised that it was announced at CES, because they forget that the PlayStation VR as a commercial product was unveiled at CES. The Morpheus prototype was unveiled at GDC. Or was it E3? It might have been E3 actually. But the brand logo reveal and that stuff. It was CES back in the day. But that was a very open development. It was to be honest, I don't think it would have been as open as it was if it wasn't for the Oculus Rift. I think the Oculus Rift and the culture of VR back then, everyone was very lovey-dovey and sharing and stuff, and then basically everyone got screwed by Facebook because they basically exploited everyone's openness, and then basically everyone stopped being open because fuck Facebook. I know I've recommended it before, but there's a great book called The History of the Future if you're interested in the early days of VR and you want to get insight to it. It's really funny reading that book because I know a bunch of stuff that's not in the book, and I know some people in the book, and it's like, oh yeah, that lines up with that, and that lines up with that, and I'm like, it's shockingly well written, that book. I was like, this guy got a lot of dirt. Yeah. Oh yes, I tweeted about it. I've got to be careful actually, because I do have knowledge. What can I say? There is patents out there that talk about the various applications for it that have been speculated at. I have tried a research version. So yeah, I don't think I can say. Well, what I'll say is, remember running up to the PS5 launch, there was a lot of emphasis being put on audio and haptics, and a lot of people poo-pooed it because they were like, what the fuck, why are you talking about this? No one wants to talk about this. And everyone was wanting to talk about the Xbox's teraflops or whatever. And a lot of people were giving DualSense and the Tempest Audio stuff like side-eye, because they were like, really? This is your big reveal? And then the PS5 came out, and everyone was like, oh. Now, I don't want to overhype it. I don't want to overhype it at all. But it is my belief that, well, first of all, I think outside of standalone headsets, I think if you're releasing a headset now, you can't release a headset that's worse than PlayStation VR 2. I think they've set a new baseline, which is great. It's great. They should do that. And as part of that baseline, I hope to see every headset in the future have some built-in haptics on the headset itself. It's a complete no-brainer once you've seen it. Yeah, the DualSense. The DualSense is every argument you need for why haptics on the headset matter. Because I think a lot of people just have very old-school thinking when it comes to haptics. They don't realize how much vibration motors have advanced. And the other nice thing about haptics is it does help with motion sickness. Is because you're putting on a helmet, you can position it in a very useful place. So yeah, no, it's cool stuff. Cool stuff. Yeah, there are patents about, like Sony patents out for using haptics for motion sickness. Yeah, so it's known information out there. It's funny because I remember, and not just Sony was exploring this, because this was back in the days when like PSVR 1 released, and this was like Oculus Rift and the Vive days. There was a bunch of researchers, including inside of Sony, who were basically taking crocodile clips. I mean, they weren't quite crocodile clips, but they were taking electrodes and they were putting it on people's earlobes, and they were shocking people. And that was research that multiple VR people were doing at the time, because it turns out that if you electrocute someone's ear at the appropriate time, then they don't get motion sick. But it also turns out that people don't want to strap electrodes to their ears. It's just not a popular consumer decision, shall we say. Right, I think Is that all of it? No. Okay, this is the part I hate, because I've got a pattern check. And I hate pattern checking. Because pattern checking is very, very difficult. Because it's very easy to fluff up a pattern. And it's not that baffling. Bear in mind that Sony makes cameras and Sony makes displays, and you know, your iPhone's powered by Sony cameras and stuff. Not baffling at all. While I think at times the PlayStation and Worldwide Studios might have been a bit lukewarm on VR, I'll say that I don't think Sony Japan has ever been lukewarm on VR. They have always been extremely passionate about VR. Okay. Right, so this is the next color that we need to get in, and it's going to have to be okay, let's get in green. But yeah, foveated rendering, I think people overhype on foveated rendering. It's good, but what is that I'm looking at? What is that, Kit Kat? I think, okay, we're gonna have to, yeah, cool. Foveated rendering, I think, gets overhyped because I think people, it's cool. Foveated rendering is very cool, but I don't want people to get too excited for it. It's one of those where I think the hype mismatches with the technology. I do think it's extremely cool, and it's a very good addition. And again, as I say, I consider the feature set of the PSVR 2 to be the new baseline. Like if you're shipping something that doesn't beat the PSVR 2 and it's not a standalone, and even in the standalone there's a lot of that stuff I'd still expect, then I think you're dead in the water. Yeah, I think you're dead in the water. Okay, that needs to go into there. Sorry, I'm counting squares, which is always tricksome, because I'm like, okay, if I fuck up counting squares, the picture goes wrong. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. See, because past Claire screwed up there. There we go. When I'm excited is combining all that with sparse rendering. To be honest, I haven't put on PS4 since they announced the new VR controllers. I just can't with light tracking anymore. I mean, the moves get a bad rep. The moves get dumped on way more than they deserve. I have a lot of love for the moves. Yeah, I feel bad how badly like the moves get dumped on. Because assuming your lighting conditions are correct, the tracking on the moves is pretty solid. I will say it is fragile considering your lighting situation, but I think yeah, the moves are pretty solid. For me, it's the fact that I moved the setup to the lounge for the PS5 because I want the PS5 hooked up to this lovely big telly, and then it's not as easy to keep my PSVR setup kind of good to go. So even though there are some PSVR games I really want to play, most noticeably Fract. If you've not played Fract, go play Fract. Fract is a very good PSVR exclusive that is not getting nearly enough love. But yeah, Fracked. It's from Endreams. And it's a PlayStation VR exclusive, and it's one of the best VR games released last year. Spoiler alert, I was actually... If there was a... Okay, cool. I was speaking to a bunch of different companies, but the only games company I was even considering going to work for, the only games company, was actually Endreams, who made Fracked. And one of my friends worked on that, by the way. So, full disclosure. A little bit biased, but not really. I feel you there. I don't know if it'll go on sale. I don't think it needs to go on sale. The thing about... Is it on sale now? Okay. No, I don't think they needed to. Hey ho, nice to see you. Yeah, I don't think they needed to go on sale, to be honest. I don't know, too many games undervalue themselves. I still think it's criminal how cheap Dreams is. Okay. We just need to hold up that square there and that square there. There's just... Oh, and those two squares. There's just some... Do I care? I do care. Yeah, we're just solidifying some holes that have appeared in the pattern. Is that a hole there as well? Oh, that is a hole there. Okay. You can't sell games, you game in Dreams. Yeah, again, it's hard for me to talk about because NDAs and everything. Personally, I will say I don't like... I think the way to go in a Dreams kind of scenario is a patronage model or a tipping model rather than a payment model, because microtransactional payment model leads you to the world of Roblox, and I don't think anyone wants that. Yeah, that's a whole kettle of fish. I'm much more my preferred monetization model for Dreams would have been a patronage tipping kind of model. Yeah, the legal shit around that's a whole kettle of fish. If Dreams wasn't part of Sony, they could be a lot more flexible on that stuff, but of course when you're part of a big corporation, if you mess up that stuff, they can sue Sony, not just Media Molecule, and Sony has lots and lots of money, so there's a lot more incentive to sue Sony, and there's a lot more to lose. Whereas if you were like a small company like Roblox was, you can pull off some dodgy shit, because if they sue you, worst case, the company goes under. But you know, you can't let Sony, the company, go under. So yeah, it's tricksome. It is tricksome, because you'd be amazed at how sort of close to the sun some of these companies go with their legal advice. And the release person from YouTube, MMs have said on streams they're working towards yeah, they've been working on that since before Dreams came out. It's not down to them. It's down to trying to get all the legal stuff sorted. It's tough. It's not an easy problem. It's not an easy problem to solve. So be patient with them. I will say though, I do like that Dreams isn't financially motivated, because I also think that most people shouldn't try and monetize their hobbies. It's like I'm kind of looking at trying to see how to get this Twitch channel not affiliated, because technically I'm not meant to be multi-streaming at the moment, but I couldn't see an easy way to get unaffiliated. So if they ban me for multi-streaming, I'll just be like, okay, and then I'll just come back and say, can you just drop my affiliate status, please? Yeah. I mean, if you're doing a thing, get money. But I don't know. I like the vibe. Yeah, it's bad. It's really bad. But the thing is I knew it was bad since before those videos came out. Because the thing is prior to joining Media Molecule, I was basically one of the main people in Worldwide Studios talking to Twitch and YouTube. And this is going back, and I was talking to Twitch and YouTube before I worked at Sony, because that's one of the reasons I got the job at Sony, because I was a person who could talk about these things, and I was talking to the companies and stuff. And so I've known for a very long time, for instance, about the numbers behind how much money people make on Twitch. And when Twitch got hacked and there was all that stuff about, oh shit, not many people are making that much money, and the people who are making, like the very tiny top tip who are making money, are making like over half of it, like in total. Yeah, and so I've always been said to people, like, if you want to do this because you enjoy it and stuff. Don't do it for any other reason, because the economics of the situation are terrible. Absolutely terrible. But yeah, no, I mean, I've been in this world for a very long time and seen all this, and I've written reports on roadblocks. And I mean, to give you an example, I was one of the people who had to excuse me, I was one of the first people who had to explain to some very senior Sony people what a battle royale game was, and explain why certain stuff was happening. And I still remember one of my favorite reports I wrote was when Club Penguin was dying. I had to write up this big exec report on what is Club Penguin, what's the history of Club Penguin, why is it dying, and mixed in with talking about company financials and stuff. I had to at the same time talk about like the pool party and why miners' helmets were a big thing, and yeah, gosh, it's memories, weird memories. I still remember one of my favorite decks. This is before I worked at Sony, and ironically, it was one of the decks that Semi got me hired. I did an early talk. This is before PS4 launched, on integrating Twitch and video game stuff, and explaining Twitch culture to people and whatnot. And I remember there was a slide where basically I was talking about social design in video games, and how if people can't ruin the experience, then your game's not social, because then you're just giving lip service to social, which is true. I still believe that. You should still have good moderation and other stuff and but if people can't ruin the experience, then it's not actually social, because that's part of being social. And on that slide I had a dancing gif of Dick Butt, and I presented that deck to I've presented that deck in a boardroom kind of situation. It's just funny because it's one of my later decks, and I do talk for a bit while that slide is up, and the whole time I'm talking there's a dancing Dick Butt on the presentation screen. And I mean, this is 9 years ago. It's a while. It's before PS4 launched. Yeah, fun times. Fun times. I've iterate. I've said a lot about all that situation. I think I've covered it quite well. The TLDRs, fuck Facebook. I've been working on this metaverse problem since before I joined Sony. It's the reason I joined Sony. And now I just can't use that word anymore because that word is just not useful anymore to have these conversations. To be honest, in the actual circles where people are working on stuff related to it, we haven't been using that word for quite some time just because the word is too vague. It has been for a while. But yeah, the person I most respect who talks about it in a broad sense is actually Tim from Epic. He has a very good sense of what we need to do. Because it's, to be honest, yeah, sure, part of it is a policy discussion. And I think that the policy discussion is an interesting and useful one to have. But I think a much bigger part of it, the real tough problem, is there's some very real, tangible engineering problems we have to solve. Okay, so I'm looking for a desaturated brown. One sec. Desaturated brown. So we're like that, but darker. That looks good. That looks very good. I think this floss will do me. Let's see. Yeah, I think so. I think this floss will do me. It's a nice sort of, desaturated. So, for those of you who came in later, I'm working on, oh dear, a new floss storage system. Give me one sec. I dropped something. Now, unfortunately, I had to push 100 nails into that board, and I have discovered the nails are a little bit too short. So I've ordered 200 slightly longer nails, because I also didn't have enough nails. So I've ordered 200 slightly longer nails. I'm going to have to pull out 100 nails, and then push in 200. But I like this system. I like this system a lot. First of all, because I do this, and it's nicely pinned. Again, like with the plastic wrap system, there we go. Like with the plastic wrap system, I'm putting the number and the serial code thing, barcode thing in the middle, so I can, if I run out, or when I run out in the future, I can replace it with the exact one I need if I still need more of that color, because that would be extremely infuriating, trying to replace the exact one. So yeah, that's the new system, and I will be doing some work to get that done. But yes, so as I say, I think Tim from Unreal Games is doing some of the smartest work, and there's some real networking challenges and stuff that need to be resolved there. But I also think social VR is healthy and hearty, and VR chat is really the only VR chat and Neos, but Neos isn't as successful. But VR chat is one of the sort of the pinnacles of, okay, no, this is still going on and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff I could say negative about VR chat, but they're still pretty much it, in terms of social VR. And when you look at like Facebook's efforts, you just laugh your head off, because like Horizons is, what the hell's Horizons? VR chat with friends, very solid. VR chat without friends, very solid. It's an interesting place. Strong recommend. Yeah, but Tim's been working on it for a while. Tim has been working. This is the thing, is like, people think the metaverse thing is new. Metaverse has been around for ages. The thing to clarify what I'm particularly interested in, I'm interested in large connected virtual spaces that have persistence. So that's 3D spaces that have persistence, that have large connection numbers, and have manifested avatar presence. So very much like Second Life. Second Life is a metaverse. 100% is a metaverse. Just we had to, get the VR stuff in, and we have to get persistence and a few other things in, and more importantly, we have to solve some really low-level, troublesome networking things. And there's some really interesting ways we are going to solve those, and I've done a lot of cool R&D at Sony that I can't talk about, but we worked on a bunch of stuff on how to do that. Me and Evans had these crazy big ideas for Dreams. Yeah, doubt they'll ever do that, because those were some pretty out there things. But yeah, cool stuff. Cool stuff. You mentioned there was new software nearing closer to release that would basically be an evolution. Oh yes, so that's what I'm working on. So I'm working on Adobe 3D Modeler. Tell you what, I'll it's not going to be great now. If someone doesn't mind going onto my Twitter feed and going back like a day or two, I retweeted a video. Can you drop the tweet link? Twitter link. Actually, don't drop the Twitter link. I think I've got link banning on at the moment because I've been dealing with some spam bots. But if you go to my Twitter, I retweeted a video of one of the artists in the private beta. I believe it was an actual Adobe artist because the private beta is under NDA. Showing off some of the stuff, not using VR in that video, but there are other videos showing some of the VR stuff off. But yeah, it's basically the Medium team got bought by Adobe. Adobe also bought Substance, so Substance Painter and all that stuff. So they've got a 3D division now. And on the team that used to be the Medium team, you've got Anton, and myself from Dreams. And a new product's being worked up from the ground with, the basic stuff that Medium had, but we've done some pretty cool reworks. And yeah, it's going to be, a PC like sculpting dream style tool. It uses signed distance fields, not signed distance functions. So for example, it doesn't have soft blend like you're used to, but it does have warp and some other stuff, and it's designed to be part of a professional artist's toolkit. So it's not for it's not as whimsical as Dreams, but it's a lot more practical. So the idea is that, and to be honest, if you're familiar with Dreams, a lot of your skills will transfer over in terms of sculpting, at least. But then you'll be taking that stuff into Substance Painter and Blender and all that kind of stuff, and working with more traditional 3D model pipelines. I mean, that is until everything goes nanite and we can just export polygon soup and screw UVs. We'll just do everything at vertex level, and crazy future that I think a lot of us hope we reach sooner rather than later, because no one wants to be doing UVs. Though speaking of UVs and no one wanting to do UVs, I don't know if you guys know a really cool programmer who really is behind most of the awesomeness in Blender's sculpting engine. And when I say sculpting engine, it's more like ZBrush sculpting than like Dream sculpting. Pablo, I forget his surname. Anyway, cool guy, cool guy. Did a lot of cool stuff in Blender. He took a break from Blender development for reasons. It's all very spicy, but he's a very cool guy. A lot of respect for him. Over the holidays, he worked with another guy, and they're making, literally just this two-person team, they're making an app for iPad called Cozy Blanket. and it looks really good as a retopology tool. So if you've ever worked in sort of PC land with models and stuff, you know, like polygon soup and getting things to game model status and like, if you know, you know. If you need to retopologize, you know all about retopology. If you don't, it's not for you. But anyway, they made an app, and all this app is on the iPad, sketching retopology. And it looks really good. It looks really, really nice, and sort of, because the thing he is amazing at, that particular programmer, is making really nice UX. And looking at his Twitter and looking at this cozy blanket that him and one other programmer put together over the holidays, essentially, it's like, holy hell, is this good? I want this in my life. Yeah, no, very much I want this in my life kind of moment. Yeah. Push that through. Well, Nanite doesn't work at real time. Yeah, Pablo Vasquez, that's it. Thank you, Kirby. Well, Dreams gets away with. Dreams is Nanite level tech. In fact, like, yeah, the SIGGRAPH talk that Alex gave inspired a lot of these separate projects. They do it slightly differently, but yeah, Dreams is Nanite level polygon counts. Because under the hood, Dreams still does use polygons for rendering. It just doesn't use polygons for its actual representation of data. It still does what Nanite does, where it generates polygon soup. Polygonal soup. Because it turns out GPUs are really good at rendering triangles. So yeah. But yeah, the difference is with Dreams, you're not treating those polygons. I mean, same deal in Nanite, to be honest. You're not treating those polygons as ground truth data. Oh, come on. Come on. Do you know, sometimes when I'm doing these really last filler bits in this chunky cross stitch, there we go, I'm like, yeah, polygon soup. Everyone likes polygon soup. Good stuff. It's good stuff. Yeah, no, so that's what a lot of oh, sorry, I forgot to. Sorry about that. That's what a lot of people think we're heading towards, is you don't need to do UV mapping if you just have enough. You have enough triangles that you can just do everything at a vertex level, and that actually opens up some really interesting options. I mean, I think UVs will always be useful to some extent, but I also think like auto unwrapping and auto UVing tools should get, like, UV wrapping is not something artists should have to worry about, frankly. It's not fun. And like, there's often, how do I say this? There's often not very important artistic decisions being made at the UV level. It's just a tedious task that has to be done. Now, that's not always true, because, for instance, in video game art and like low poly stuff, people can sometimes still be making artistic decisions at the UV level, but generally speaking, we're moving away from that world. So, I mean, that's where we're heading with mesh shaders and inference, and yeah, I don't think everything will go the way that Dreams works and the way that Modeler works, which is why we still export polygons and stuff. I think the polygonal workflow will be around for a while in terms of like final application. But I don't think it needs to be in art tools. I think it's something that programmers should have to worry about. And the nice thing, ironically, is when the artist is not delivering polygons, but they're delivering abstract shapes or more high-level data representations, the graphics engines and the rendering engines can actually make more intelligent decisions about that data, and they can do better loading, and they can do better performance scaling, and all kinds of stuff. And it means that in the future, so the way Dreams is written, for example, if you had an infinitely powerful computer, like just all the power in the world, it would be able to represent a more detailed representation of the world, because it's like a fractal, right? It's mathematical stuff, and the more times you can run the equation, or the more points of precision you can run it, the better. I mean, there's diminishing returns very quickly, don't get me wrong. There are diminishing returns, but yeah, it's just a different situation. It's a different situation. It's one of the reasons why I like implicit sign distance functions. Though there are advantages to other data modes. So for instance, modeler is sign distance fields, which is more voxely. But it means we can do things like the warp tool, which if you've seen it, you've seen it. Yeah, I'd say at this point, Moo, the closed beta's pretty much, the ship has sailed. But keep an eye open. The open beta happens at some point. I don't know when. And even if I did know when, I couldn't say. But I genuinely don't know when. It's gonna happen. I think we already are starting to use like machine learning to do better UV unwrapping and mesh decimation stuff, but you don't want to be running machine learning stuff at runtime. It's just not the smart call. Okay, be right back, gang. Right back. There we go. You've applied already. Oh, okay, cool, Moo. Yeah, no, it's moving along. it's moving along that. Behind the scenes, the buffer is rendered at a different resolution, a different frame. Right, yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, that's called lotting. It's just that more abstract data representations allow us to do better lotting in real time. The difference is back in the day, we would do, well, initially we didn't do LOD at all. And then what happened is we started doing LOD, but we did it at model level, right? And there's different kinds of LOD. So it's like if you're doing texture LOD or mesh LOD, or you're mixing them in and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And, you know, we're at the level now. Well, okay, let me finish what I was going to say. So anyway, that's lotting. And so then in the era of sort of distance-based object lotting, you would see objects pop. But then a problem with this is then you would have artists have to manually break things up, whatever, because you have to lob the entire object, right? So there's a whole area of tech art around building good LODs and balancing bitmaps and all that kind of stuff. Where we are now with Nanite and with Dreams, because Dreams does a... Oh yes, I stopped for a different reason, not because I lost floss. Anyway, my next floss is ready. There we go. The nice thing with Dreams and with Nanite is because they're generating these clusters of triangles, we can LOD not only on the object level, but we can LOD at the like sub, like we can LOD these little clusters and blocks. So we can actually, like, a single model can get LOD'd. And because things are made by a computer in a very repetitive, algorithmic way, not like, you know, you don't have these random polygons that an artist will make sometimes that are really long and thin or strange or whatever. They're very well-formed clusters that are very regular. The LODing can be more precise, and we can do things like transvoxel algorithm to blend between LOD layers and hide the seams of lodding and stuff, so you don't get popping anymore, basically. So yeah, it's just different levels of work, and so that's where we currently are with sort of the cutting edge tech on there. Similar technology that's been developed for the same sort of reason, but it solves a different part of the pipeline. It solves after the triangles. Is you would have heard of it. It's called variable rate shading. It's called something else by some graphics card manufacturers. Sometimes graphics card manufacturers come up with their own names. But basically what it means, and the thing that really pushed this was VR, and this is where foveated rendering and stuff comes in. But what it means is based on where a pixel is in the screen, or better yet, if you've got eye tracking based on where you're looking, you can give that pixel more or less attention in the shader, and the shader can basically run a different version of itself. It can have LOD shaders, basically. So for instance, if you have like a reflective surface and it does like a ray trace under the hood, or you have, you know, some crazy 10 texture cube map lookup or whatever, you can do that when the player's looking directly at it up close versus far away. But all of these techniques are things that artists shouldn't have to worry about. All of these techniques, if we build better pipelines and better tools, should just work. And it's a bit of a failing whenever an artist has to spend time thinking, and unfortunately this is still the case because we live in the real world. But you know, we try to minimize it as much as we can. But whenever an artist is thinking, I need to change my art because the computer go brr, that's the place you don't want to be. And I mean, it's fine, you know, artists have to work with limitations and stuff. It's just some limitations are nicer than other limitations. If I tell you, hey, you've got to paint a canvas, but you can only use these 2 colors of paint, you'll be like, okay, cool, yeah, no, let's go do that. But if I tell you, okay, you can paint this canvas, and at some point I'm going to tell you, oh, the canvas can't take any more paint, and you're like, wait, but I'm halfway through painting my picture. It's like, well, fuck. Guess you're going to have to repaint your picture then. And I mean, it's like, it's whether or not that you know, when you get told, oh, you're running out of paint, does the software or does the workflow give you an out? Does it give you tools to handle that? Or you know, the classic sort of tech artist problem, because you know, you make a character and you unwrap the character, then you rig and skin the character, and you know, then you animate the character. But you know, if for some reason the model's not quite right and you need to change the base model, you need to redo all of those steps. Now, thankfully, with some modern tools, the redoing of those steps can be somewhat automated. But you know, traditionally, if you tweak the model, now you've broken the UVs, you need to redo UV, and now you've broken the verts, which means your blend shape's all broken, and it means you get into this whole nightmarish cycle of basically having to redo all the work because some earlier step wasn't quite up to snuff. So a lot of work in tools has been to like make that less painful and make that situation less likely to happen. That's a thing that people work on very hard, because if you've ever been that artist or that, you know, if you've ever been on the game team and it's like, oh, this has to be all redone, you're like, oh, bollocks. And I've actually seen situations where I've been working on a game, and I mean, this is 10 years ago now, so this is a while, working on a game, and basically there was a cutscene, and the character model looked bad in the cutscene, and something had to be changed about the character model. And so what we did is we made a second version, well, not actually a second, I think it was like a 7th version of the character, because we had already done it before. But we made a version that was literally loaded only for this one camera shot. So we had 2 versions of the character loaded, which isn't too strange. We actually had more than 2 versions of the character loaded, if I remember. But literally, we had a version of the character that wasn't rigged, wasn't skinned. It was literally just UV mapped because it was a semi-static shot. And we did some hand, like, vert animation on this character to just get this, like, I think it was like a 10-second shot or something, like maybe a 7 or 8 second shot. It wasn't long. It wasn't very long. I mean, it was long enough that we needed to fix this problem because it looked ugly. But it wasn't long enough that, it wasn't long enough that you needed, like, perfection. And so we had this really jackass hack in there to fix this. Also, we didn't have to re-go through this whole pipeline I've described to you. So yeah, fun times. Fun times. I mean, performance limits are always complicated, which is why it's best if the engine has the room to make trade-offs and decisions. I don't think so. Mostly because, I suppose, rote task. I mean, it's basically whether or not the process requires any artistic decisions. It's whether or not the process requires artistic decisions. If it requires artistic decisions, then we're in a tougher place. But that's where assistive AI comes in, right? So I think the best modern example of assistive AI that is in daily use now is if you've used Photoshop in the last, I think, 5-8 years, it's now got this thing called content aware fill, where you can select a part of the photo and you can just say, you know, erase this, but erase this with content aware. And then so what it does, instead of just like replacing it with a background color or making it transparent, it looks at all the stuff around it and it's like, well, you clearly want to sort of fill in based on these details, and it does a rough fill in, which for small little patches and stuff, I mean, it's basically an advanced healing brush, but it works really well. Works really, really well. And I think that's a good example of assistive AI technology. And if you look at the cozy blanket video for that UV unwrapping, there's a lot of AI smarts in that. But your average user doesn't think of it as AI. They think of it as, oh, it just does what I want it to do. Because you just sort of sketch and it fills in the blanks. And that's really the magic. That's the very hard work. A lot of work goes into making that magic, that invisible magic. And, you know, that's when you know you're doing it right, as no one notices. Which can be a bit infuriating at times, but it is the best scenario. If it just kind of works and everyone's like, oh, that's cool, yeah. And you point it out to someone and they're like, oh. You know, they're surprised that when they draw a circle, it's an actual circle. Thanks, Sam. Slowly coming along. Cthulhu feeding chibi Scottish Cthulhu feeding Nessie a fish, which, you know, I think is an adorable image. Adorable image. Come on in here. But yeah, these are the sort of trade-offs that we make. But it is cool, you know, it's like if you're making movies or you're making books or you're making video games, it's easier now than it's ever been. It doesn't mean the difficult creative process or the decisions are any easier. It just means that a lot of the junk, a lot of the gaff, the stuff that you don't want to have to think about, well, you don't have to think about it anymore, you know? I mean, can you imagine having to make a YouTube video and print it to, tape, and then sit there with scissors and cut up the video on tape, you know? And you can't even listen to it unless you mount it on a reel or whatever. You've got to just sort of look at it and do visual cuts. You know, and, techniques that used to be the most cutting edge, like really advanced splicing magic, are now done with a single button, like if you want to do an L cut or a J cut or whatever. You know, these are the things that make you go, wow. But on the flip side, it's one of the reasons I like cross-stitch, because, I mean, what I'm doing now is, I wouldn't say it's unchanged from 100 years ago. The needles are better, the floss is, because it's synthetic, it flows through quickly. The Aida, which is the fabric I'm sewing on, is, better manufactured or whatever. So there is a lot of minor benefits that you do definitely see, but the process is pretty much the same as to what it's always been, which is, somewhat comforting. But, whereas computers help you, assistive AI helps you create art digitally, I think one of the things you learn quickly when you're doing oil painting or any physical crafting thing is how to let physics help you creatively, right? Like if you're doing miniature or model painting, you learn quickly the difference between a wet and a dry brush, and smudging and sponging and dips and all the little hacks, because humans, bless our silly little hearts, are very lazy. it's funny. It's such a paradoxical thing in the sense of we're wonderfully lazy, but then we take our spare time that we've gained by inventing agriculture and all these tools so that we don't have to go to the river to get water and all this kind of stuff. And then we're like, hey, well, I've got free time. I know I'm going to invent a task for me to do, like, this cross stitch. Because this is not feeding me. This is not, but it's enjoyable. It's something I want to do. But it's very strange that I want to do this, I mean, I don't think it's strange. I think it's healthy and human. But at the same time, while I want to do this, if I figure out a way to make it slightly faster or more efficient, or a little trick or whatever, I'll use the trick. I'll do the slightly more efficient, faster way or whatever. And then sometimes you'll look at an assistive technology, like, I could get a machine embroiderer, for example, and then it'd be like, well, no, I don't want that, because I want to arbitrarily push a needle through and do this stuff. And it's like, well, why are you doing this activity, and you're willing to take this little trick or this little acceleration that you have here or there, but you're not willing to use a machine to embroider? It's like, well, reasons. It's like, well, what's the reason? I don't know, it just feels good. So this is strange how we draw that line. It's a very strange line that we draw. I find it amusing. I find it endlessly amusing as someone who never has enough time in their life and yet makes time for video games and cross-stitch and streaming and silly things like that. It does give you time to think. But I could just as easily spend this time, sitting down and actually thinking. I mean, I know I have to keep my hands busy and sense of accomplishment of making a thing and whatnot, but I just find it interesting that how we draw the line between what's considered useful and when something becomes boring versus, like, there's a reason you don't play noughts and crosses, right? Because you're bored of noughts and crosses. Your adult brain knows that any decent game of noughts and crosses is a draw. Recently I've been doing killer Sudoku because I've not done normal Sudoku in years because I find normal Sudoku boring. But killer Sudoku is just different enough and just interesting enough that I can once again enjoy Sudoku. Because but I'm starting to feel like, killer Sudoku, that's not to say like I'm an amazing whiz, I can solve Sudoku very fast or anything. I'm a lot slower than average people, or like, good Sudoku players or whatever. But I also find that I get bored of things a lot faster. Partly that's like my ADHD and my character traits and my personality and stuff. But I consider it a bit of a superpower. It's why I've got the career I've got. Because I get bored of things very fast, and then I'm like, okay, well, I'll program a computer to do the thing because I'm bored of it now, or I'll be like, oh, I want to read this book about this strange technique. Oh, I'm bored of that now. Okay, I guess I'll read about this other strange thing on technique, and I'll learn stuff that I have no use for, and then I learn enough stuff I have no use for, and then I turn around and I'm like, oh, well, actually that thing I learned 10 years ago was actually useful. Yes, Cracking the Cryptic. I have their puzzle app on my phone. I struggle with some of theirs, well, most of their stuff, but I enjoy it. Though I find sometimes it's a little bit too cryptic, and it doesn't oh god, I need to be able to turn off those stupid restream messages. I did automate math So in primary school, and bear in mind this is before like Math Lab and things like that, and this is before Wolfram Alpha and things like that were pretty popular. But so this is me learning algebra. This is mid to early 90s, primary school. Anyway, I wrote my own graphing software, and I handed in printouts of my homework because I was like, I don't want to solve this equation. I've solved these kind of equations before. I don't want to graph this. And I literally did that. And thankfully, my math teacher knew that I actually knew the work. But it was really funny because so here's a problem you have when you're like me, when you get bored of things fast or whatever. I was finishing school and I basically had flunked out of the advanced mathematics course because I had been so bored in early maths in different classes that I was usually ahead of the syllabus. But at the same time, I would ignore when they were teaching things, and I just had some weak fundamentals in some areas because I thought I knew something and I didn't actually fully understand the thing because I had gone ahead and gone on to the next thing. And so I had to, for the last holidays of my schooling career, like the between what we call B block and A block, which is like between your last year and your second last year, I basically spent my whole summer holidays doing the entire math syllabus from late primary school through to high school all over again, just going through every single subject matter to rebuild my knowledge and to find out, because I didn't know, I couldn't say to a teacher I just don't know these bits because I've missed these bits or whatever, but they were just fundamental bits that I had not got. So I just had to speed run effectively the entire syllabus again to find the particular things I had tripped over. And then thankfully I was able to do advanced maths again and stuff, and then I was able to get into the uni course I wanted, which was a maths degree. Well, it was a computer science degree, but it was part of the maths department because it was a proper theoretical computer science. It was much better than my UK degree. Hardcore math stuff. And I still remember. You've got to understand, South African universities operate very different to UK universities, if that's your frame of reference. I don't know if this is true in American universities, but because of South African universities, they don't care if you drop out. In the UK, they care because if you drop out, they lose money, kind of thing. But in South Africa, there was enough students, and you paid in advance, and some other stuff of how it worked is they didn't care as much if you flunked out. And I remember my first year, the advanced maths course, the advanced calculus course in the first year you had to do. They were 1 out of 12 of you will drop out of this, because I was in the accelerated one, and they were 1 out of 12 of you will drop out of this into the year-long one. And true enough, I managed to stay the course, but the class started in this massive auditorium. And by the time we finished the first year of the advanced math class, we had lost maybe 9 out of 10, maybe not 10, maybe not 11 out of 12, maybe 9 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 9. We had lost the bulk, by far the bulk. Comfortably over 3 out of 4. But I'm pretty confident it was, thing. But that worked for me because it was an accelerated course. I didn't have time to get bored. It was just constantly 11 out of 12 dropped out. When I say dropped out, they dropped from the accelerated math stuff, which was the accelerated math stuff covered stuff 2 to 3 times faster than the regular one. And you would just drop down to the regular one, and then, That was like they covered pretty much the same topics, but they just covered them in a much slower speed, and you would take longer to get those credits, like way longer to get those credits. And it means that like you wouldn't be able to take well, no, this is first year, so it was so I think Calc 101 is the slow version of the course. I forget what the number for the fast version was, but like Calc 101 was like a year-long thing, and this one was a semester long. Yeah, because it was 3 semesters, I think. It's been so long. So yeah, this one, yeah, that sounds right. 3 semesters. Yes, I remember, because I remember thinking dividing by 3 is a strange thing. 3 semesters. So this did what the Calc 101 did in a year. This did in a semester, so a third of the time. So if you drop down to the year-long course at any time, which you could, it wasn't... I mean, you might have to backtrack your steps, if you missed something. But essentially you could continue on. But it did mean, because the whole way through, there were these accelerated courses. But what it meant is you couldn't do... If you did the accelerated courses, by your final year, you were able to do, like, the proper math stuff. And you'd never be able to go on to do a master's or a PhD or whatever. Well, I suppose you could, but I don't know if they would accept you into the program if you hadn't done the accelerated stuff. And to be fair, a lot of people who were doing the maths courses, they weren't doing maths as their primary study, so, they could take longer because they didn't have, like, third-year maths courses. So if it took them, if the 3 or 4 year degree had 2 years of maths in it, and it took them 2 years to do their maths, then they were still fine. Or 4 years to do their maths, they were still fine. Whereas if you were in a math-heavy course, if you didn't keep up, well, you just wouldn't finish your degree in time. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. Yeah. I actually gave I had that calculus book for ages. So there was one textbook that covered 2.5 years of lectures. Not all subjects, just the calculus. Oh my god, that book was a tomb. It was one of those books that had rice paper pages. I don't know if you've ever handled a book with rice paper pages, where the papers are crazy thin. And this book was a beast of a book. I remember getting that book as a first year and just freaking out. So I was like, there's no way. And thankfully, that book did cover a very long time. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. School was an interesting time. I think you only need 1 or 2 good teachers to really change your entire schooling career. It's amazing what 1 or 2 good teachers can do. Of course, the real problem that a lot of people don't want to acknowledge is how much of your academic life is determined by your parents and their support or lack of support. I was very, very fortunate in that regard. My mum was very determined that I get a good education, and so from a very young age I had all the appropriate toys and books and things like that. So I got hey Magma, how you doing? I got obsessed as a child with puzzle books. puzzle books. I loved them. And that obviously develops a whole range of stuff. And then if you do puzzle books, IQ tests are ridiculous. Like, don't put any faith in IQ tests. But one of the things that people don't know about IQ tests, or I think people now know, but back in the day it wasn't as well known, is if you were of a certain type of character or you had a certain type of background, you were much more likely to do well in these tests. And it just so happened that everything that I was interested in as a small child and everything that had been put in front of me, I mean, part of this wasn't a mistake because my parents had done the reading, and so to speak, was exactly the kind of stuff that would prepare me, a young me, for doing well in IQ tests and things. So I got a lot of scholarships and silly stuff like that, and ridiculous IQ test scores, not because I'm smart, but just because I got given the right tools to pass those things. Because it's like, if you've never seen a Sudoku puzzle before, and someone shows you a Sudoku puzzle and says, solve this Sudoku, you'll struggle. But if you've done a few Sudoku puzzles, and then someone throws a Sudoku puzzle at you, or even one of its crazy variants, like the cracking the cryptic variants, you'll be fine, because you know all of the rules of Sudoku puzzles. And that's very similar in IQ tests. IQ tests are basically the same deal in that once you know how those types of puzzles work, it's very easy to answer those puzzles. And if your brain from a young age has been exposed to that kind of thinking, it's easier for you to solve that kind of stuff and grok new patterns. I still remember, oh, not straight, oh dear, I hope it gets better soon. I still remember though that the whatchamacallit, thingamajig puzzles. Oh yes, first time I saw a Sudoku puzzle, I was in university, first year university, because Sudoku puzzles became trendy quite late. Like, I mean, now the idea that Sudokus are like a trendy Asian thing, like they've been a big thing in Asia for a very long time, in Japan especially, but they didn't really come to like English newspapers until early 2000s. So I think this is 2002, 2003, our first year of uni. Someone, like, we spot the Sudoku puzzle in the paper, and a bunch of us math kids basically at the lunch table are like, what? Let's do this. Let's solve this. You know, it's next to the chess puzzle in the paper. Oh God. I'm a nerd. I'm a huge fucking nerd. Anyway. A lot of us couldn't solve the Sudoku thing because we didn't know a lot of the rules, like the rule of 45 and things like that. That once you know, and it's easier to solve. But we thought that we literally had to bisect the Sudoku puzzle. And if you've ever bisected a Sudoku by hand, that's what bisect basically means, where you find things where there's like two options or two, maybe three options or whatever, and you find a pivotal one and you pick just arbitrarily what number it could be, and then you basically carry on filling out the Sudoku, seeing if that branch is the correct branch, like possibility branch is the correct branch, and if at some point you hit an unsolvable point, you rub out everything that was up to that point, and you go back to where you bisected, and you know it's the other choice. Or if you're unlucky enough to have three choices, you know it's one of the other choices. So that's bisecting a puzzle. I mean, bisecting literally means cutting in half, so that only actually is true if there's only two choices. I suppose it would be trisecting. But yeah, we call it bisecting. So anyway, yeah. And I remember a lot of us were very stumped by this early Sudoku. I laugh thinking back on it now, because now I'm like, well, anyone can do. It's not back propagation, it's bisection. Back propagation is a little bit different. Back propagation is making use of feedback loops, and it's adjusting. It's a much more analog process. Also, back propagation is prone to certain errors. I mean, like, bisecting works because there's like a true solution, or at least very, very few solutions. Oh, I can feel that that's wrong. It's looped in there. There we go. There we go. I had too much slack in the floss line, and I was basically knotting it in the back. Knotting it in the back. But yeah, does anyone have any fun projects that they've started over the holidays, or started now that they've gone back to work? Any fun little things keeping you busy? Let's just go. Actually, no, let me just go up properly and I'll stitch this over. I think I'll just jump the stitch later. Filming, oh yes, you told me you're filming that docu-style thing. Yeah, hope that goes well. Yeah, Kickstarter's funny. I reluctantly backed the Nuccio Bell Kickstarter, not because I was reluctant about Nuccio Bell, but it's just like another Kickstarter, and I'm kind of I have serious Kickstarter fatigue at this point, though I am eagerly awaiting one of my Kickstarters to be delivered. I don't even want to think how much money I've plowed into Kickstarter over the years. I know there was one year I put over like $2,000 to Kickstarter, and I was like, oh shit, I've got a problem. To be fair, every single project I have backed has delivered to my satisfaction. Not to everyone's satisfaction, but to my satisfaction, every project I've backed has delivered. And I backed some of the early stuff, like the Double Fine game and a bunch of board games and stuff. Anyway, the Kickstarter I'm looking forward to having delivered soon, and bated breath, is my Tundra trackers for VR. I'm really, really waiting for my Tundra trackers. I cannot wait for that S7 dongle, just so I can have less dongles attached to my computer. Because at the moment I have to have a hell of a lot of dongles attached for my tracking to work. And I'd like to just have one dongle to rule them all. That's my plan. Art Gallery and Dreams, nice. Learning Blender and UE5 and drawing a lot more. Nice. Do you want to share any of your drawings? I should... Yeah, feel free to share a drawing. Yeah, I haven't booted up Dreams in a very long time. It has been a while. I need to finish making a video that I wanted to make over the holidays that was just a bit harsh for me to make. And every time I sit down to try and make it, it's tough. It's also the reason why I don't touch Dreams over the holidays. No worries, no worries. I have to admit, to control my Twitter, I actually have a lot of different lists that I put people on. I follow surprisingly few people, actually. And sometimes, these days actually, I can follow someone, mute them, and then put them on one of the lists. I've got quite aggressive muting on my Twitter account, where like I don't see retweets unless they're quote retweets. I have a whole bunch of different stuff muted, terms and stuff. Yeah, I'm quite fussy about my Twitter. It's strange. It's like I used to. I don't have it anymore. Just again, mental health. But I used to have a dreams column that was, if anyone used hashtag Maiden Dreams or Dreams PS4, or there was one or two other, indreams.me, they used an indreams.me link. There was a few other things that, like, if they did, it would show up in my Twitter column. And it was just this like, it was filtered by if it had at least one like, I think. Yeah, I think that was it. And that was like my stream of dream stuff. Yeah. Do you think digital space is the future of art? I mean, yes, but not. I mean, fuck NFTs. Fuck NFTs hard. NFTs are just a scam. I think people always value analog stuff, but I think even now, if someone's making canvas prints or whatever, or canvas works, like, there's no such thing as like art without technology. I remember when I was a wee lass, and it was really young, and so this is early 90s, and there were people in my art class who would use an overhead projector, and they would project like the image the reference onto the canvas, and I mean, it's just a different version of when people use the grid method, where they block out their canvas with grids and then they block the reference art out. And I mean, yeah, so there's always technology involved. I'm hoping that like digital art technology becomes more analog, and I think that's where like VR controllers and tablets and those kind of more soft inputs help us. I think we will get a lot more assistive AIs in our pipelines, things like content-aware fill, or if you're a graphic designer using Illustrator or whatever, like the pen tool does a lot of smart things to help you do your job, like, auto close little gaps and smooth a curve, and just lots of little things that help, but yeah, so I do think the future of art is digital, but I don't think analog's going to go anywhere. I think people will still be spray painting walls in 50 years, but I think people might also be throwing up AR holograms on walls. I think there will be more digital. Analog photography hasn't gone anywhere; it's still around, but digital photography is just way bigger. And if you said you were a photographer, if you took photos, you were a photographer up until about the iPhone, right? Once the iPhone happened, everyone's taking pictures, but not everyone's a photographer. Just the medium shifted, right? And I think the same thing has to happen with 3D art. I mean, it's already kind of happened with 2D art, where, Bob in accounting can make a shitty Photoshop and, shove, for the office email and make a funny thing. Or, people whose job doesn't involve art will make these crazy GIFs or these you know, or people using dreams, for example, right? Like, a lot of those people aren't professional working artists, but they're making digital art. And I think the shift that has to happen and is happening, but you know, we've got to build more tools for it to happen, and we got to enable it. Where's my peg? Is that the peg that I'm working off? I think that's the peg I'm working off. It is. Cool, because I need more floss and I've run out. That's got to change, right? In the same way that everyone plays video games, everyone's going to be making digital art. And I mean, there's going to be people who are really good at it. There's going to be people who have skills that other people don't. But everyone needs to... I do think memes are art. Memes are definitely art. They're not fine art, but they're art, 100%. And again, you know, it's the difference is someone just doing like a, you know, 2005 era like text and caption manipulation of the image, or they're doing, you know, a dank meme crunchification, you know, palette shift, or they're taking a pre-existing comic panel and editing it to make their funny meme, or, you know, taking a bird and putting arms on it. That's all art. As long as it's transforming the piece, it's art. I was always upset with how snobby people got about in the dreams community about meme culture appearing in dreams. I think it was actually one of the healthiest things for dreams. The problem was that actual high quality content was initially hard to find, and it was a UI problem more than anything, because when we only had one stream, you weren't able to separate out the stuff. But I think they've now swung way too far in the other direction. And yeah, you don't see, yeah. It's the same way that most food that's made is fast food, or is junk food, or is comfort food, or whatever, you know. Most people aren't eating French cuisine on the day-to-day. But most people are eating mac and cheese and pasta and that kind of stuff. So, you know, art needs to be accessible in the same way food is accessible. And the cool thing about that is if you make it accessible, then people develop much more refined techniques. Like if I was to have a dinner party, a random dinner party in 95, and there were 10 guests at the table, and I started talking about posing for photos and rule of thirds and photographic composition and different filters and film grain and all that kind of stuff, people would go, what the fuck are you talking about? And unless someone was a passionate hobby photographer or a professional photographer, they wouldn't have a clue. They wouldn't have an opinion. Whereas now, you do the same dinner party, and they know what the rule of thirds is. They know the different poses that make their photos and their selfies look good. They know about filters and color balance and all kinds of other stuff. They might not have the vocab. They might not have the professional vocab to express it, but, you know, it's there. And as a result, they're able to appreciate photography at a much deeper level because they're able to see a good photo. And, you know, the same thing happened with video games. And the same thing has happened with memes and art. It's slowly changing. Yeah, remix culture's always been important. Remix culture is, you know, crucial to how social, anything worth doing is worth interacting with, you know. If your idea of politics is you vote once every 4 years or once every 6 years or whatever your voting system is, that's not politics, that's just voting every so often, you know. Same way as if your idea of your idea of food is, I go to a fancy restaurant once in a while, that's not food. Whereas, if you're like, oh, I'm going to make my spag bowl a little bit fancier, or I'm going to, I'm not just going to use cheddar this time, I'm going to like put in a different cheese, or I'm going to mix in some different cheeses, or what happens if I swap out this ingredient for this ingredient, and da-da-da. You learn to bake. Yeah, there's no rules of good art. In fact, what we're seeing, again, in meme culture, highlights this, is exactly the opposite. It's easier now than ever to make a refined image. And so what's happened, is dank memes and crunchification of images, and specifically stuff that computer algorithms would deem as, because we have these algorithms, because like Google Photos has an algorithm like this that basically measures how good a photo is. So if you take a bunch of photos on holiday, it can summarize your holiday photos and only show you the good holiday photos. So there's already these kind of algorithms that exist, and people are intentionally making art and memes that fail these algorithms, that look like they're distorted and broken. And a lot of people who see that initially think, oh, they're all just running the same terrible filter. And some people are. But then you get wonderful people who take that further and break the system even further. Same way that people sort of rebel against clip art style, or any kind of repetition, Again, it comes down to boredom. It's the human superpower. The moment we get bored of something, it's the faster we move on. And now with internet culture and everything else, we're just hyper accelerating that trend. I think my favorite mutation of culture that we've seen in recent times is when the algorithms got very aggressive with moderation because of false COVID information. And we already were seeing this trend somewhat, but because of TikTok auto captioning and because of like auto content moderation, people started going, oh, it's the global panini, or they came up with all these kind of mutations on words. My favorite is in TikTok memes and whatever, instead of saying kill, they'll say unalive or dead make. I've been seeing dead make lately. That made me chuckle. I'm gonna dead make you. It makes me chuckle because it's such a Dutchism. Like we would always joke that Afrikaans people, when speaking English, would say, I'm going to kill you dead, or I'm going to throw you with a stone. Those were like the classic grammar examples. Because of like, if you're thinking in Dutch grammar and then you're speaking in English, it's easy to make those mistakes, especially Afrikaans. And people would often, make those mistakes. But anyway, that kind of mutation is happening really, really fast. No, you don't need to know how art is created to appreciate it, but you will inherently be able to appreciate it more if you understand how it was created. It's the same way of like, if I look at a picture and I have no idea how that picture's manifested, I can only appreciate the final product of that picture, right? Or if it's an oil painting and I know how to paint with oils, then I can appreciate the difficulty of things. So like a classic example of this is, I'm terrible with names, by the way, so I'm going to blank on names, but there is a oil painting where it's abstract geometry shapes, like two color paintings, where it's like a white canvas with a red circle. And what people don't realize is it's a painted white canvas, like a painted oil white canvas, and then a painted red circle. And when you examine, like everyone's like, oh, that's such a dumb, simple painting. And then if you know anything about oil painting and you examine it and you realize you cannot see the brush strokes, like if you look really closely, you can kind of see the brush strokes. But like the canvas isn't like white canvas, it's painted white. And the circle's painted, and there's no... It's made by a human using human techniques, but there's no evidence of the human in the painting. It sounds ridiculous, but so again, the knowledge of oil painting allows you to appreciate that thing more. It's not to say that you need to know how to oil paint to appreciate it. You could look at the actual thing and just go, "Ooh, yeah, that rocks my boat." Chances are, though, you'll look at it and go, "That's just a red circle on a white background. Why is that interesting?" So yeah, knowledge usually improves everything, to be honest. It's like get into a situation where someone makes a gluten-free version of a recipe, and usually, not always, but if it's an alternative recipe and it's gluten-free or whatever, usually it doesn't taste as good. Just frankly, it doesn't. But if you can appreciate, oh, this is gluten-free, and so more people can enjoy it, or, like, oh, my friend over there can eat this meal without dying, you appreciate the cooking that goes into it a lot more, because they had to do some fancy cooking science and, crazy technique to make the same thing that's actually quite easy to make when you're using gluten. And so, but again, the knowledge that it is gluten-free makes the difference. But you don't have to know that it's gluten-free to eat it and enjoy it. But that's good. If knowing how a thing is created and you see a pattern in your board, that'll inherently force you to seek out new things. And that's how like art evolves, right? It's like if you ever get a music... Okay, so if a music programmer or a music like composer or whatever friend, like if you have people who are like working music people, and I don't mean like in a band or whatever, I mean like deep science music people, and they take you to a gig, I guarantee you the gig is going to be weird as fuck. I guarantee you the music is going to be like, because for them simple melodies and simple chord progressions and stuff sound dull because they've heard it all and they know how to make a good sound. But it's like, okay, I'm now going to make a good sound and I'm going to do all this crazy shit to the music and it's going to sound really weird. But the fact that I'm able to make a music while breaking all the conventional rules of music is, yeah, it's cool. There's never too much content. To say there's too many poets and too many artists is just wrong. I do think under capitalism there is an inherent limit to how many people can make money doing a thing, a creative thing, because there's only so much time in the day. So it's harder to get people to spend time on your art or your creations than it is money at this point. I mean, it depends on demographics and where in the world and blah 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 blah. But yeah, it's harder to get time than money usually. That's usually the problem, at least in first world countries. So that's one of the reasons why people work in teams, because then you can spend more money and effort and energy to produce a thing that more people will like, and then you can spend the marketing money and all that stuff, and it's one of the reasons for collaboration and scale. But another thing to think about, I mean, so live streaming is terrible for this, So thankfully it has a lot of advantages that make up for it. For like the fact we can have a conversation that is genuine, it's real time, all that kind of stuff. But if you are someone who is actually interested in making video content, you really should be making offline video content, and you should be, editing stuff down. Like, best case scenario, you're someone who's making like a picture, right? Because if you spend 10 hours making a picture and someone can appreciate it in 30 seconds, yeah, some people might look at it for 5 minutes or whatever, but someone can appreciate it in 30 seconds, it's easier to get more people to appreciate the thing you made. Whereas, let's say you're a violinist and you want to get people to listen to a 1 minute or a 3 minute violin piece that you've practiced, that's a hard sell. Trying to get people to listen to your 3 minute no vocals solo performance of the violin, that's tough, because it's harder to get ear time than it is eye time. And 3 minutes is a much bigger ask. Or even a minute is a bigger ask, to be honest. It's at the point where, are you still scroll ready or whatever? So at the moment, this is why I say streaming is bad for this. So if you have a big streamer, right, and they've got, 10,000 viewers. Now, the streamer's not spending an hour for every hour on stream. They're actually spending way more than an hour, and they have like a support team and staff and, So the amount of human hours to produce an hour of streaming content, high quality streaming content, is probably closer to 5 to 10 hours per hour of streaming content. But given that you've got 50,000 viewers or even 5,000 viewers, that ratio is still really, really off, right? Whereas you look at something like a Disney or a Marvel movie, and you think about how many artists, how many people worked to make that, and you work out the monetary value per second of footage. And when I say monetary value, I'm just using that as a standard for the amount of effort and human hours put in per second of footage. And it doesn't mean inherently that the Marvel movie is better spend of your time. But realistically, it does mean that, that art is denser. Does that make sense? More calorie rich. And I mean, hey, don't talk to me about books. Me and my wife do books. I mean, my wife's just brought out her, actually, is it on the shelf? It should be. Oh, there it is. One sec. No, that's Kara's cows. What am I saying? Brains. Here we go. That's the version I don't like. So this is the bigger print version. We actually do, for event stock, we actually do a smaller format version, which is closer to, it's a nicer size, but unfortunately Amazon and stuff. But so that is the wife's new book. That's a proof copy of a thing. The reason it's there is because the actual stock's in another room. Yeah, that's the actual size of the print copy we sell at events and stuff. It's a much nicer size because it fits in your hand. The Amazon copy is a little bit bigger than this. It's not as big as that proof copy I have over there. That proof copy is an old print. But that's her fourth book. And I literally just, over the holidays, finish the first draft review of her 5th and 6th book, because I've been a bottleneck, frankly. I have been too busy. So yeah, we've been doing that for some time. And anyway, so what I was going to say is, yeah, you don't have to tell me how hard it is to get people's time to read the books, because honestly, the price makes no difference. You could give away the book for free and it wouldn't really make that much of a difference. In fact, I think giving away the book for free would probably hurt readership. What you really need is you need to convince enough people. And that's the other thing that annoys me is your initial, I don't know, say 10,000 copies sold have nothing to do with the quality of the book and have everything to do with your marketing and how well you're able to build up an audience base and things like that, which we're still working on. We're still trying to get better at. But it is frustrating because it's like most of her reviews have been pretty good, but I've just got to work harder to get more people to. Oh dear. Refresh. No. Do I care enough? It's a bit of spam. I don't care enough to refresh the on-screen chat. It's annoying though. It is annoying. It's always YouTube as well, which is double annoying. What's I going to say? I need to look at what the YouTube chat filtering options are, because I'm sure that there's better options I can do to enable filtering on that. But yeah, so I'm trying to get better at promoting her books and working through all that, and it's a thing that we're working on. But yeah, it's tough to get people to read stuff. Is a reality of this situation. But yeah, it's nice though, because when you do get readers and they read the stuff, then they come back and they're like, hey, I read the last book and I like it. And that's really, it's such a good feeling. Like when we go to conventions and stuff. And to be honest, conventions and physical sales are actually where we do really well. And yeah, people will come back to us like at the next con or whatever, and they'll be like, yeah, I read it and enjoyed it and stuff. And that's a fantastic feeling. It's a really good feeling. But even video, it's hard to get people's eyeballs. It's a thing that you've got to work on. It's why retention rate is so important. And that's what separates the really good video makers from just the mediocre video makers. It's like how many people actually click on the thumbnail and the title, and then how many people watch past 30 seconds. Oh, you say that. We actually have Ducky's first 2 books as audiobooks. And again, same problem. We paid a professional narrator and did those. Did a whole production of it. And I really like them. They turned out really well. And again, they get good reviews, but trying to actually get just the numbers. It's a thing. It is a thing. But yeah, her first 2 books are on Audible, and on our site we also sell them direct as audio CDs or MP3s through Itch. So yeah, we've done all that, got all that. It's a thing. Yeah, they're on Audible. There we go. I think that I don't want to start a new color tonight. I think that's where we are going to probably wrap for tonight. I need to do, so those are all like a gray color there, and there. Well, actually that's a dark red I've got to fill in. But yeah, that's all a gray color that goes in there, and I think there's some of that gray in there as well, if I recall. And then we will be getting onto the water and the sky. I mean, the sky, I've already done a bunch of progress on the sky. But yeah, then we'll be looking at finishing this out. It's going to get finished before the end of the month. That is the plan. That is the plan. And then, of course, there's the back stitching to go through and back stitch the whole thing. And when you back stitch a piece like this, that's when it really pops, because that's the outlining, basically. That's the thing you can't do in pixel art. But yeah, and then there's always the fun thing of how messy is the back. I don't think it's too messy. I think I've done a pretty damn good job. There's definitely bits like here where I was earlier on in the piece, and bits like here where I've had to jump around. But overall, I'm really happy, especially where I've done like the sky and it's super neat. And then even like the Nessie is really, really neat. Worked really hard to keep that as a single bit ongoing. Well, it's lovely to see you all. See you when I see you. I'm back to streaming twice a week, roundabout. Always be in the evening, because it's just easier now with my work schedule. With that all said and done, take care of yourselves, everyone, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye-bye.